War conjures images of gunfire and chaos, of men locked in desperate struggle, bullets flying and explosions echoing across the battlefield. But at Chosin Reservoir in 1950, American soldiers faced a deadlier foe, one that couldn't be outgunned or outmaneuvered: the cold. Temperatures plunged to 50 below zero, turning the landscape into a frozen wasteland where even the air itself seemed to bite. Snow swallowed men to their waists, and the wind cut like a knife, howling relentlessly through the mountains, sapping strength and hope. The ground was iron hard, impossible to dig for cover, leaving soldiers exposed to both enemy fire and the merciless elements. Every breath crystallized instantly, and rifles froze to bare skin, making even the simplest tasks a battle for survival. The cold wasn't just a backdrop, it was a killer, claiming fingers, toes, and lives, striking silently and without mercy. Veterans remember the agony of frozen hands and feet, a pain worse than wounds, a torment that haunted them long after the battle ended. Survival became the only victory that mattered, as men clung to each other for warmth, forging bonds in the face of unimaginable hardship. This isn't just a story of battle, but of catastrophic equipment failure, gear that was supposed to protect, but instead betrayed them. The boots meant to shield the soldiers from the cold became their worst enemy, trapping moisture and freezing solid around their feet. We'll uncover how thousands were crippled not by bullets, but by their own gear, boots and gloves that failed when they were needed most. This is the untold story of Chosin, courage against an enemy you can't shoot, a battle for survival against cold itself, where every step was a test of human endurance. The Korean War began in summer, and U.S. commanders believed it would end by Christmas. Overconfidence blinded them to the looming threat, the brutal Korean winter. Focused on a quick victory, they ignored warnings about the deadly cold. Supplies prioritized weapons, not winter gear. Soldiers marched into the mountains in summer uniforms, lacking parkas, gloves, and proper boots. The leadership failed to imagine what fighting in sub-zero temperatures meant. When Chinese forces surrounded the Americans at Chosin, the troops were already weakened by the cold. Many became casualties without ever seeing the enemy. The oversight turned a tough battle into a desperate fight for survival. The cold, empowered by poor planning, became the deadliest adversary. The Chosin disaster began long before the first shot was fired. The standard issue M-1944 Shoepac boot was supposed to protect soldiers from the cold. Designed with the best intentions, it was meant to be a technological leap forward for troops facing harsh winter conditions. Its rubber bottom kept water out, but also trapped sweat inside, creating a dangerous microclimate around the foot. Wool socks and felt insoles soaked up moisture, turning boots into icy swamps. Every step squished with cold, wet discomfort, making movement a misery. Soldiers couldn't dry their gear, fires would reveal their positions, and there were no warm tents. The cold seeped into everything, and the dampness never left. Taking boots off risked swelling feet that wouldn't fit back in. Many soldiers chose to keep them on for days, despite the pain and risk. The Shoepac's waterproofing became a curse, guaranteeing wet, freezing feet. What was meant to be protection became a trap. In the Korean mountains, this flaw was catastrophic. The terrain was unforgiving, and the weather even more so. Soldiers marched in boots filled with ice-cold water, unable to escape the cycle. Each day, the risk of injury grew. The design, meant for cold, wet conditions, failed utterly in Arctic cold. The boots simply couldn't keep up with the brutal reality. The Shoepac didn't just fail to protect, it created the perfect conditions for frostbite. Feet became numb, then blackened, as the cold claimed its victims. Thousands suffered horrific injuries, not from enemy fire, but from their own boots. The pain and damage would last a lifetime for many. The very gear meant to save them became a silent weapon against them. Trust in their equipment was shattered. At Chosin, a boot's flaw became a disaster, one that would haunt survivors long after the battle ended. When exposed to extreme cold, the human body's first instinct is to protect its vital organs, its core, by sacrificing warmth in the extremities. This is a survival mechanism, but it comes at a steep cost for hands and feet. Wet skin loses heat 25 times faster than dry air, making any moisture on your feet a dangerous liability in freezing conditions. Even a thin layer of sweat or water can rapidly draw warmth away from the body. Soldiers' feet, trapped inside shoe packs and soaked in sweat, lost heat at an alarming rate. The boots, meant to protect, instead became a hazard, holding in moisture and cold. As the body redirected blood away from the feet to keep the core warm, blood flow slowed dramatically. Without circulation, tissues in the feet began to starve and die. First came numbness, frostnip, where the skin turned pale and sensation faded. If exposure continued, frostbite set in, as ice crystals formed inside cells, rupturing them and causing irreversible damage. Feet turned pale, then blue or black as oxygen-starved tissue died. Nerves were destroyed, and the pain that once warned of danger disappeared, replaced by a chilling numbness. Many soldiers kept walking on feet that were already lost, unaware of the full extent of the damage as they pushed through snow and ice. The real agony came if they survived and thawed out. As the feet warmed, blood rushed back into dead and dying tissue, causing excruciating pain and swelling. This was a silent catastrophe. Thousands suffered in silence, unable to fight the laws of biology or the relentless physics of heat loss. No amount of courage or determination could stop the freezing. The cold was merciless, indifferent to bravery. The Shoepac trapped feet in a deadly environment, wet, constricted, and exposed for days on end, turning a soldier's own boots into an instrument of injury. The result was mass frostbite, crippling the force and leaving countless soldiers unable to walk or fight. The boots' failure was a lesson written in frozen flesh, a stark reminder of nature's power and the limits of human endurance. As frostbite spread, soldiers became unable to walk, fight, or even carry gear. Healthy men turned into casualties, slowing the retreat and endangering everyone. Rifle companies lost half their strength, not to bullets, but to frozen feet. Medical stations were overwhelmed, unprepared for the flood of cold injuries. Morale collapsed as men watched friends become helpless. Fear of the cold inside their boots haunted every step. The epidemic of frostbite did more damage than enemy attacks. The retreat became a mass medical evacuation. Trucks carried frostbite victims instead of supplies. The cold had disarmed the force, turning a battle into a humanitarian crisis. A single piece of failed equipment magnified the disaster. Chosin became a tragedy of human suffering and failed preparation. With their boots failing, soldiers improvised to survive. Some dried socks on hot engines or inside their shirts, risking burns or discomfort. Others wrapped feet in rags or insulation, hoping for extra warmth. The 1st Marine Division, issued all-leather boondocker boots, fared better. Their boots breathed, and leaders enforced strict cold-weather discipline. Marines changed socks, avoided tight laces, and shared survival tips. Army soldiers, stuck with shoe packs, suffered far more. Improvisation became a lifeline, wiggling toes, never sitting still, never removing boots unless necessary. Even so, the environment was too harsh and exposure too long. The difference in boots was stark. Marines had fewer cold injuries. The Shoepac's failure was proven in blood and suffering. Survival often came down to luck, ingenuity, and the boots on your feet. Chosin's disaster forced the U.S. military to completely rethink everything about cold weather gear and survival. Over 6,000 frostbite cases demanded an urgent and effective solution. Scientists carefully studied the Shoepac's failure and the Marines' relative success in the harsh conditions. The result, the Mickey Mouse boot, insulated with layers of rubber and wool, trapping warmth even when wet or frozen. This innovative boot truly revolutionized cold weather survival for American soldiers. New doctrine taught soldiers to layer clothing, avoid sweating, and vigilantly care for their feet in the field. The lessons of Chosin became standard training for every new recruit entering the Army. The Army vowed never to send troops into the cold, unprepared or unequipped again. The legacy of Chosin lives on in every single piece of modern cold weather gear. The suffering at Chosin sparked a revolution in military thinking and preparedness. Sometimes, the smallest detail, like a boot, can decide life or death in the cold.